They questioned your integrity, not because you were wrong, but because they needed control, and in that moment, you felt it. The urge to defend, to explain, to prove you meant well, but the second you spoke, something in you collapsed. Because they weren't listening for truth, they were listening for weakness. Every word you used to protect yourself only built their case. You thought you were clarifying, but you were confessing. What if silence wasn't surrender? What if it was power? If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller, not because you were wrong, but because you tried to be understood, this is your turning point. James sat at the end of a long, polished conference table. 12 people in the room, one strategy presentation on the screen, and one quiet ambush waiting to unfold. He had spent 3 weeks perfecting that deck, data, vision, projections, every slide a chess move, and when he stood up to speak, he knew the room wasn't with him, not because the strategy was flawed, but because Marcus, his colleague, had already poisoned the well. A few minutes in, Marcus interrupted, tone polite, smile intact, words sharp as razors wrapped in compliments. "I just wonder," he said, "if this approach is as robust as it looks. James has great ideas, but sometimes he runs ahead of the data." Of the room shifted, eyes moved. Some people leaned back, others glanced down, and for a breathless second, James felt it, that clawing instinct to defend, to prove the hours, to explain the research, to reclaim the room with facts. But then he paused. He didn't argue. He didn't flinch. He looked at Marcus, one quiet breath, one still gaze. And nothing else. Silence, heavy, uncomfortable, powerful. Marcus filled it. He repeated himself, this time with less certainty. He tried to reframe his jab as a concern, and still, James said nothing. Someone across the table cleared their throat. And in that stillness, the room began to wonder, was he confident? Was Marcus being petty? Did James know something no one else did? Silence changed the frame. It wasn't about the strategy anymore. It was about the posture. By the time the meeting ended, James had spoken less than anyone, but people walked out quoting him. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. That day, James learned something most people never do. You don't need to fight to win. You need to let others lose by revealing themselves, and that only happens when you stop playing defense. When someone accuses you, directly or subtly, your mind lights up with one instinct. Defend. It feels logical. It feels righteous. It feels like the only way to clear the air. But here's the truth no one tells you. Defending yourself doesn't earn you respect. It earns you suspicion, because when you justify, you validate their right to question you. You put your actions on trial, and in doing so, you quietly tell the world you're unsure of yourself. Even when you're right, even when your heart was clean, even when the accusation is absurd. The moment you explain, you step down from your frame and walk into theirs. Think about it. Have you ever watched someone get defensive in a meeting? They talked fast, their tone shifted, they leaned in, trying to clear things up. But did you trust them more? Or did you feel something tighten in your chest? Defensiveness triggers doubt, not because it's wrong, but because it signals fear. And in human psychology, fear invites inspection. It's the same reason animals freeze when threatened. Stillness feels confident. Motion feels panicked. And this doesn't only happen in meetings, it happens in relationships, in online debates. At dinner tables, anytime you say, "I didn't mean it like that," what you really say is, "Your opinion controls how I respond." And once they know that, you lose control, because you're no longer speaking from truth, you're speaking for approval. And power never lives there. The strongest presence in any room isn't the loudest voice. It's the one who doesn't chase understanding. It's the one who lets misunderstanding burn out on its own, because defending is emotional, but holding still. That's strategy. So next time they push, before your mouth opens, ask yourself this: is what I'm about to say proof of strength, or just proof that they got to me? Claire was the youngest executive in the company, sharp mind, clean record, quiet presence, but that didn't stop the whispers. At the annual leadership panel, a senior manager tossed a question her way. It wasn't a question, it was a setup. "So Claire," he said, "some people feel your decisions come across as cold. How do you respond to that?" A laughter flickered in the room, not loud, but enough. All eyes turned to her, waiting, hoping for a flinch, a backpedal, a sweet explanation to soften her edge. She didn't give it. She sat still, hands resting, shoulders relaxed. She glanced at the man who asked, held his gaze, and then looked out across the room. "If that's how they see it," she said, "they're entitled to that view." Then silence, no smirk, no apology, no defense. And something strange happened. The mood shifted, not in her direction, but in his. He tried to laugh it off, tried to clarify, tried to say it was a light comment, but his voice cracked, just enough for the room to notice. People didn't walk away talking about her tone. They walked away remembering her stillness, because Claire understood something most don't. When someone labels you cold, they're often trying to make you warmer so they can handle you better. But if you fold to that pressure, you lose the edge that made them talk in the first place. So she didn't bend. She let the label hang in the air, and in doing so, she showed the room what power really looks like. Power doesn't explain. Power doesn't flinch. Power doesn't ask for agreement. It speaks once, and then watches the world reorganize itself around the silence. Power isn't who talks the most, it's who sets the frame. Every social interaction, a meeting, a dinner, a debate, runs on one thing: framing. Who defines the context, who makes others respond, who dictates what matters and what doesn't. And here's the rule no one teaches: the one who reacts least controls the frame most. When you defend, you enter someone else's world, you validate their question, you legitimize their tone, you play their game on their board, by their rules. But when you don't respond, or when you reply from your own tempo, you shift gravity. Imagine you're in a group setting, someone jabs. Oh, you always think you're the smartest one in the room. Most people laugh awkwardly, some explain, some deny, but the frame is already set. Now everyone is thinking about your ego. But there's another move, one that flips everything. Pause, don't rush, don't blink, scan the room, not in defense, but in quiet curiosity. Then say, "That's an interesting take," or better yet, say nothing at all. What happens next isn't about the words, it's about the atmosphere. People start to wonder, why didn't you get upset? Are you above the comment? Did they just embarrass themselves? You see, the room isn't watching the jab. They're watching your posture, and posture sets the frame, because silence, when grounded, doesn't look weak. It looks sovereign. It says, you don't get to define me. You don't even get to make me move. This is how frame works. It's not about answers, it's about presence. And when your presence is still, unbothered, unshaken, the room starts orbiting you instead. There's a moment before every confrontation, a flicker, a look, a shift in tone, and if you pay attention, you'll see the bait, because most attacks aren't made to destroy you, they're made to provoke you, to pull you out of stillness, to make you flinch just enough so they can claim the moral high ground. This is the tactic of the emotionally clever. Those who know how to weaponize subtle shade. Daniel knew it well. He once told a room full of clients, "I'm not saying Olivia's plan is wrong. I just think it's optimistic." He said it slowly, with a smile, and everyone turned to her, waiting, hoping she took the bait. She leaned forward, explained, clarified, added numbers, caveats, tone shifts, and in 3 minutes, she lost them, because now it looked like she was scrambling, defending, backpedaling, trying to win something she never needed to compete for. And Daniel, he sat back, arms folded, calm, silent. He looked confident. She looked reactive, frame flipped. This is how the game works. They bait you to move, so they can hold still and appear stronger. And if you take the bait, you hand them the frame. It happens in relationships, too. Your partner says, "You don't really care about me anymore," not to understand, but to test, you panic, you explain. You list the things you've done, you defend your love, and in doing so, you give power to their doubt. But what if you didn't take the bait? What if you let the comments sit in the room, unanswered, unvalidated? That's the harder move. But it's the move that keeps your center, because when you don't react, they're left with their own echo. And echo unmatched becomes discomfort. Let them talk, let them bait, let them overreach. Your power isn't in the comeback. It's in the pause they didn't expect. Most people try to deny the accusation. The mock strategist doesn't deny. He flips it. Someone says, "You're arrogant." He replies, "Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable." They say, "You're manipulative." He responds, "Only people who can't be influenced say that." They say, "You're fake." And he smiles. Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. These aren't comebacks, they're reversals. You don't just reject the accusation, you turn it into a mirror, one that reflects their insecurity instead of your guilt. Because here's the truth, most accusations aren't about you, they're projections, attempts to shrink your presence. So the other person feels less threatened, and when you respond with a defense, you accept that framing. But when you flip it, you expose the motive behind it. It's not defiance, it's precision. You take their emotional weapon and hand it back to them, unloaded and embarrassing to hold. Imagine someone tells you, you think you're better than everyone. And instead of arguing, you say, "No, I just don't think like everyone." That hits different. Because now the room isn't wondering if you're arrogant. They're wondering if you're onto something. The power here isn't in being seen as a good. It's being seen as untouchable, because the more calmly you reframe, the more they unravel. And if they push harder, you say less, you tighten the response, short, grounded, unapologetic. Every word you say should carry weight, no fluff, no pleading, just stillness, and the blade turned back in their direction. Because when someone attacks your character, the strongest move isn't to rebuild your image, it's to make them question why they ever thought they could touch it. Silence is powerful, but silence backed by aura, that's untouchable. There's a level beyond not reacting. It's when people stop wanting to test you altogether, not because they fear your retaliation, but because your presence makes them hesitate before they even think of striking. You've felt it. Someone walks into a room, says nothing, does nothing, and still everyone adjusts. The conversation softens. The energy shifts, the tone recalibrates. That's not fear, that's weight. It's the quiet authority of someone who doesn't play defense. Because they never expect to be attacked, and if they are, they know it won't land. Marcus had it. People didn't interrupt him, not because of his title, but because of his presence. He once stood through an entire meeting, while a department lead tried to throw shade, soft jabs, masked in politeness, the kind designed to chip away subtly. Marcus never spoke, never looked flustered. He just held still, shoulders loose, breath steady, gaze calm, and slowly. The room stopped laughing at the jokes, the attackers started to sweat, and by the end, it wasn't Marcus under pressure. It was the one who tried to shake him. Aura isn't mystery for the sake of being mysterious. It's clarity, it's composure. It's showing you've already made peace with who you are so no one else's words carry weight. When you radiate that, accusations don't stick, insults don't sting, tests don't escalate, because people can feel, on a level they can't explain, that you don't move unless you choose to. And that stillness, that's what keeps you above the noise. Not by silence alone, but by presence that says, you don't get to enter my world unless I open the gate. There's a moment when you no longer flinch, not because you've trained yourself to endure, but because you've transcended the need to respond. It's the shift from strength to immunity. Strength still bristles, still clenches, still prepares to strike back. Immunity doesn't even register the hit, because it doesn't see it as one. You reach this place when your identity is so rooted, no one else's perception matters. Their words become background noise, not threats. You don't ignore out of ego, you ignore from mastery, and mastery doesn't prove, it defines. Most people spend their lives explaining, trying to correct narratives, fixing misunderstandings, defending character, but every explanation, every correction, every emotional appeal is a message to the world. I need you to believe me. And when they don't, you collapse, because you gave them the power to shape who you are. But what if you didn't? What if the lie spreads and you say nothing? What if they twist your words and you don't clarify? What if the story runs wild and you keep walking? That's when something rare happens. People stop asking, is it true? They start wondering, why isn't he worried? And that question flips the power, because now you're not the defendant, you're the mystery, and mystery always carries more weight than proof. In time, others step in, not out of loyalty, but out of discomfort. They can't handle your silence. So they fill the void, they defend you, they question the accuser, they try to bring balance. And you never asked for it, you never moved. That's the difference between chasing a clean name and building a strong one. A clean name needs constant polishing. A strong name stands untouched in the storm. You don't earn power by defending yourself. You earn it by defining yourself. There's a final threshold where silence becomes strategy, presence becomes pressure. And every word unspoken feels more powerful than 1,000 arguments. At this level, you stop chasing validation. You stop trying to correct the story. You stop reacting altogether, because now your name doesn't travel through explanations. It travels through aura. People feel it before they hear it. They shift when you enter. They measure their words around you, not because you've threatened them, but because your stillness whispers something they can't ignore. Oh, this one doesn't play defense. You let others swing, let them shout, let them accuse, twist, distort. You don't flinch, you don't chase, you don't engage, and in that stillness, they begin to crumble, they overplay, they reveal too much. They start spinning stories no one asked for, because silence has done what defense never could. It made them feel alone in the attack, and when people feel alone, they lose power, not because they were wrong, but because they lost control of the frame. This is how reputations turn from fragile to legendary. Not by shouting louder, but by saying less and meaning more. You become the one who doesn't respond because there's nothing left to prove. The one who doesn't clarify because you never asked for agreement. The one who holds still while others unravel themselves. So next time the pressure rises, next time they expect you to defend, don't let your silence echo, let the room adjust. Let their words hit nothing but the air and walk on, not because you're above them, but because you've already won before they even began.